You already know this god, the blue fire for hair, the fast, mean little smile, the schemer down in the dark cooking up a plan to overthrow heaven and take the throne of the sky for himself. The lord of a burning pit where the wicked scream forever. You met him in a cartoon, maybe, or a video game, or a comic, and every single version told you the same thing. This is the bad guy. This is the god of the dead. This is, more or less, the devil. Now let me show you the real one. Deep under the world, past the last root, past the last echo of anything alive, a god sits alone on a plain gray throne. He is not laughing. He is not scheming. He is doing paperwork, more or less, sorting the endless quiet crowd of the dead, keeping the count, keeping his word. He almost never leaves this place. He almost never asks for anything. And in a family of gods who lie and cheat and burn down cities over their own vanity, he is, and I promise I can prove this, very nearly the only honest one in the building. That is Hades, the actual Greek god of the underworld. And here is the thing that should stop you cold. The Greeks who invented him never once called him evil. Not once. The horns, the hellfire, the plot to conquer heaven, none of that is his. We put it on him. And by the end of this, I think you are going to understand exactly why we did it, and it says far more about us than it ever said about him. Let's go back to the beginning before anybody feared his name. Hades was not born a monster in a pit. He was born a prince. He is one of 3 brothers, the sons of the Titan Cronus, and you already know the other 2. One is Poseidon, who would rule the sea, and one is Zeus, who would rule the sky and become king of all the gods. 3 brothers, right at the top of the whole universe. And when the Great War was won, when the Titans were finally thrown down, the 3 brothers had to split the cosmos between them. Now, how do you divide creation fairly between 3 gods who could each shatter a mountain? You don't fight over it. You don't let the strongest just take the best. In Homer, the oldest story we have, Poseidon tells us exactly how it went. They drew lots. They gambled for it like 3 brothers shaking stones in a helmet. Zeus drew the wide, bright sky. Poseidon drew the gray sea. And Hades drew the mist and the darkness, the world beneath the world, the kingdom of the dead. Sit with that, because everything you were ever told gets this backwards. Hades did not lose. Hades was not banished. Hades was not punished or cast down or exiled by his little brother. He drew his kingdom, fair and square, by pure luck of the draw, an equal third of everything that is. And the earth you are standing on and the mountain of the gods itself, those were left common to all 3 of them. He was never a fallen angel. He was a brother who got dealt the darkest card in the deck and went down without complaint to do the job. And what a strange, lonely job it was. His very name tells you how the Greeks felt about it. Hades means, roughly, the unseen one, the hidden one. And people were so afraid of that name, afraid that just saying it might make him look up, might draw his attention to you, that most of the time they wouldn't say it at all. They reached for a nickname instead. They called him Plauton, the rich one. Why rich? Because think about where wealth actually comes from for a farming people. It comes up out of the ground. The seed that sprouts, the gold and the silver in the dark of the mine, the good black soil, all of it belongs to the world below. So the Lord of that world was also, quietly, the giver of the earth's riches. That is the god they turned into a villain, a god whose other name means generosity. From Plauton, by the way, the Romans got their name for him. Pluto, and he had one more famous thing. A helm, a cap of pure darkness, forged for him by the Cyclopes that made whoever wore it completely invisible. It is such a good piece of kit that the other gods kept borrowing it. Athena wore it into battle. Hermes wore it. A hero named Perseus borrowed it to slip away from monsters. The god of the unseen owned invisibility itself, and notice this, he lent it out. He shared. Try to imagine Zeus lending anyone anything. But I have to clear up the biggest lie of all because it poisons everything else. His kingdom is not hell. When you hear God of the underworld, your mind hands you fire and torture and endless punishment. Throw that picture away. The Greek underworld was not a torture chamber. For the vast, ordinary majority of the dead, it was gray, quiet. A dim, misty country where the shades of everyone who ever lived drifted on, remembering. Not burning, just gone below. There was a small, terrible deep place, Tartarus, for a handful of the truly monstrous, and there were sunlit fields, Elysium, for the greatest heroes. But Hades himself was not down there gleefully roasting sinners. He wasn't a torturer at all. He was a caretaker, a warden of the quiet. Even his monstrous guard dog gets misunderstood. Cerberus, 3 heads, a mane of snakes, the whole nightmare. Everybody thinks he's there to terrorize the dead. He isn't. His job is the opposite of cruelty. He sits at the gate to let the dead come in and to make sure they never wander back out. Because the one rule of the whole kingdom, the rule Hades exists to keep, is simply this: the dead stay dead. Order holds. What is gone stays gone. It is a grim rule, but it is a fair one. It falls on everybody, king and beggar, exactly the same. And keeping it is the loneliest work in the universe. Now here is where it gets genuinely surprising. Because once you actually read the myths, you notice something that nobody ever tells you. Hades, the so-called devil, is far and away the best-behaved god in the entire Greek pantheon. Let me put him next to his brothers so you feel it. Zeus, the shining king of the sky, the one we picture as noble and wise, Zeus is, frankly, a serial predator. The number of women and mortals he chases, tricks, and forces himself upon, wearing disguises to do it, is genuinely hard to keep track of. Poseidon is very nearly as bad. These two, the respectable brothers, the ones who got the sky and the sea, leave a trail of ruined lives across every story they touch. And Hades has essentially one love story in all of mythology. One. And once he has her, he stays. He is not off in the mortal world in disguise, chasing shepherd girls. He is home in the dark with his queen. Now, to be honest with you, and this channel does not lie to you, there is one small exception the old sources whisper about, a nymph named Minth, whom the myths turn into the mint plant. It's a minor, late little tale, and the versions disagree on it. But hold it up against Zeus's endless parade, and the truth is almost funny. The god we made into the devil is the most faithful husband on Mount Olympus. So let's talk about that marriage, because it is the one story you think you already know, and you have almost certainly been told only half of it. Her name is Persephone. She is the daughter of Demeter, the great goddess of the harvest, and, it matters, the daughter of Zeus. And the way you usually hear it, it is a straightforward horror story. The dark god bursts up out of the ground, seizes an innocent girl, and drags her screaming down into hell. And I won't pretend the abduction isn't in there, it is. By our standards today, it is not a romance. But the piece that almost always gets cut out changes the whole shape of it. Before Hades took her, he went to her father. He went to Zeus and he asked, and Zeus, her own father, the king of the gods, said yes, gave his blessing, arranged it. In that harsh old world of arranged marriages, where a father simply handed a daughter to a husband, Hades did the one thing we can actually recognize as trying to do it properly. He asked the man in charge, out in the open, instead of just taking in secret the way his brothers always did. It's still not gentle, but he wasn't a rogue villain grabbing what wasn't his. He was a suitor who got a yes from the father, and the person nobody bothered to ask was the girl. That's not Hades being uniquely evil. That is that whole world, top to bottom, and her own bright father Zeus signed off on it first. And then comes the part that made the seasons. Up above, Demeter, the harvest goddess, loses her mind with grief looking for her daughter. And when a harvest goddess despairs, the whole earth pays. The crops die, the fields go bare, a killing famine spreads, and the gods realize that if this keeps up, there will be no people left at all. So Zeus, who started this, finally sends Hermes down to bring Persephone back. And Hades, the villain of the piece, does not fight it. He lets her go. But before she leaves, she eats a little of the food of the underworld, a few seeds of a pomegranate. And here the ancient poets themselves disagree, so I'll tell you honestly that they do. In the oldest telling, the great hymn to Demeter, it's a single seed, and it binds her to spend a third of the year below. In later Roman versions, it's 3 seeds or even 7, and she stays for half. The number wanders from poet to poet, but the meaning is always the same, because she tasted the world of the dead, a part of her belongs to it now, and she must return to Hades for her season every single year. And that is why the world has winter. When Persephone goes down to her husband in the dark, her mother grieves, and the earth grows cold and bare and dead. And when she climbs back up into the light, Demeter rejoices and the whole world blooms. Every spring you have ever seen is a mother getting her daughter back. Every winter is the months the girl spends home with the Lord of the dead. It is not a story about a monster stealing a girl. It is a story about how love and grief and even death take their turns and how the whole living world turns with them. But maybe the clearest proof of who Hades really is comes from what he does when people show up at his gate and ask him for the impossible, because they do, and watch how the so-called devil answers. A man named Orpheus loses his wife, Eurydice, on their wedding day. And Orpheus can sing so beautifully that he does the maddest thing anyone has ever done. He walks down, alive, into the land of the dead, all the way to the gray throne, and he stands in front of the Lord of the Underworld and he sings his grief. And Hades, this cold, grim, terrible god, is moved. He weeps. And he does something he is never, ever supposed to do. He says yes. Take her back, go on, walk her up to the light, and she is yours again, on one condition. Don't look back at her not once until you are both out in the sun. That's the deal. And it is a fair deal, honestly kept. It is Orpheus who breaks it. A step from the surface, desperate to see her face, he turns, and she slips back into the dark forever. Hades kept his word. The man could not keep his. Or take the strongman Heracles, sent down to drag Cerberus up to the surface as the last of his great labors. He doesn't have to steal the dog, he asks. And Hades tells him, yes, you may take him on one condition. You master him with your bare hands, no blades, no weapons, no tricks. Subdue my hound fair and square, and you may borrow him. Heracles does exactly that, and Hades lets the dog go and trusts the hero to bring him back. Over and over, this is who he is. He is inexorable, you cannot bribe him, you cannot beat him, and the dead do not escape him. But he does not cheat, he does not tempt, he does not punish the innocent. He makes a hard, clear bargain, and then he keeps it, which, in this family, makes him practically a saint. So how did the fairest, most faithful, most reliable god on the mountain end up as our picture of pure evil, with the horns and the pitchfork and the burning pit? Part of the answer is history. When a new world came along, a world with one god and a single great enemy, a devil, a fallen rebel who wanted to storm heaven and rule it, and who ran a burning hell of eternal torment below, that new world went looking for somewhere to hang all of that. And there was Hades, already standing at the bottom of everything, already lord of the world below. So the two got quietly welded together. The fire of the devil's hell got poured into Hades' gray, quiet kingdom. The devil's crime, the rebel who wanted the throne of heaven, got stapled onto a god who never once reached for his brother's throne. Centuries of art and story piled the horns on him. And then in our own time, the cartoons and the games gave him the blue hellfire and the scheming grin and the plot to conquer the sky, a plot that, I have to say it plainly, is Satan's story. It was never Hades. The real Hades drew his kingdom by lot and stayed in it, loyal for eternity. But history is only half of it, because here is the part I really want you to sit with. We didn't make Hades the villain because the myths told us to. Remember, the Greeks who actually knew him never called him evil. We made him the villain much later, and for a reason that has nothing to do with anything he ever did. We made him the villain because he rules the one place none of us can forgive. Think about it honestly. We don't hate Hades for cruelty. He's less cruel than his brothers. We don't hate him for lying. He keeps his word better than any of them. We hate him because he is the door every single one of us is walking toward. Because everyone you have ever loved, and one day you yourself, will be counted among his quiet people. He is the face we put on the one thing we cannot bear and cannot beat. And it is so much easier to draw horns on death and boo it, and cast it as the bad guy in a cartoon than it is to admit that death is not evil at all, just patient and fair and coming. And maybe you know this shape from your own life, far from any myth. Think about who gets cast as the villain in the rooms you actually live in. It's so often not the person who did something wrong. It's the person who stands next to the thing that hurts. The doctor who has to say the words nobody wants to hear. The one who has to enforce the rule or deliver the bad news or simply be present when something ends. We resent them not for any wrong they did, but for what they remind us of. Hades is the god of exactly that. The one who does the necessary, thankless, unbearable job faithfully and gets remembered as the monster for it, while the charming brother who caused half the real suffering gets to be the shining king. So the next time you meet him in a game, in a movie, grinning with his hair on fire, I hope you see the joke of it. That is not the god of the dead. That is our fear wearing a costume. The real one is quieter and stranger and honestly kinder than the story we handed him. He drew the darkest lot there was, and he never once complained. He kept every promise he ever made, and he has been faithful to his queen, to his word, to the one grim rule that holds the whole world together, longer than any bright, beautiful, celebrated god on that sunny mountain above. So I'll leave you with this, and I genuinely want to know. When you were a kid, who taught you that the god of the dead was the bad guy? Was it a cartoon with the blue fire, a video game, a church, a book? Tell me down in the comments which Hades you met first, and whether, after tonight, you might cut the old brother in the dark just a little bit of slack. He's been waiting a very long time for somebody to.